Computer record. All right. I don't know why I just did that. Just felt like I need to wake myself up. Um, cool. All right. Three, three, two, one. Hello, internet, YouTube. What is happening? This is Matt Orozco, and I'm with my good buddy,
Lowell Greenblat. How are you?
Lowell, Lowell Greenblat. We are here with another Macabre Monthly. Here to talk about just what's happening with horror. How is it going? How's it been? What's its plans for the weekend?
Uh, I mean, in a word, January. January just sucks.
It's a
Like,
weird
I
month,
guess,
isn't it?
yeah, it's like if your birthday's in January, I guess you have reason to celebrate, but otherwise, why? It's like, I guess you need January to say the year started somewhere, but this month just sucks.
Yeah, I would agree. It's now like all of a sudden diagonal raining outside. So and it just came out of nowhere, like, oh, severe thunderstorm just spotted. And it's like, well, what does a meteorologist do? But that's a conversation for another day. We have a pretty interesting topic for this month's episode, which I believe is our 12th, which would mean that this is our 1 year anniversary. What did you get me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I should have known that, but I did
I
not.
just literally thought about it right now when I remembered that the episode number and 12 months, the math came in hard. Thank you. Thank you,
Uh,
elementary school.
we should celebrate, I guess, by having a 12th episode. Cool,
Yeah.
fun. We did.
I think
Yep.
so. Perfect.
Yeah,
Job's done.
we're off.
Um,
Yeah.
so for this month's theme, I'm gonna hand it to you, Lowell, to kind of talk a little bit about what it is. It's top, I don't even know how to describe it. Top five horror pivots or five horror pivots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I did my top five films from filmmakers who aren't normally known for horror or who made a horror film at a time that they were established or semi-established in some cases. I mean, I'm being pretty elastic with this, but long story short, people making a horror movie who have previously made films but never a horror film before, because you always get some interesting attempts with that. Because if you think about it, horror is really a gateway point for a lot of filmmakers. You usually think that you make a horror movie to like get through the door to make other fare, like with Zack Snyder, Dwight H. Little. Actually, this is making me think of another list we can come up with down the line. But yeah, just like you're already through the door. Why make a genre film that some people would consider a step backwards, but
Yeah.
it's actually in these cases. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So like horror pivots, people that just went into horror either because like because they were on a weird hot streak and they just decided to hard right into horror, or they just never made a horror film and all of a sudden just birthed one.
Yeah, maybe they had it in the chamber for a while. Maybe it just kind of occurred to them. But yeah.
Yeah, this was a I don't want to this wasn't hard, but it was interesting to see how narrow this list kind of is. Um,
Mhm.
Especially if we don't, obviously we can't know all filmmakers. So there's maybe some indie guy who's like, I did one horror movie in the middle of my hot streak, but I digress. We will get to those top fives. But first, talk a little bit about what we've been watching. The holiday hangover is now hopefully over. What have you been watching, Lowell?
Uh, Not much that's great, I have to say.
That's
Like
unfortunate.
January. My wife actually read Cycle of the Werewolf, which I hadn't read before, and she
Oh,
wanted to
fun.
pick up Stephen King, so she read it, and I told her there's a movie based on it that I haven't seen since I was a kid. So we watched Silver Bullet. Uh, eh, but but also, if this was a movie you watched as a kid and loved, like, fine,
Yeah,
like, yeah, I
it's
can
got that
totally
nostalgic
see.
effect for me.
Yeah, and there's Gary Busey all of a sudden for several scenes, and it takes itself pretty seriously. Written by Stephen King, like the screenplay by Stephen King. I didn't know that either. Even
Huh.
though it's weird, because I knew that Dino De Laurentiis, who produced it, originally hired Don Coscarelli to direct it. And I'm like, I would love to see what that movie would have been, but alas. Yeah, just not bad. Not great werewolf effects, but honestly, if you're a werewolf movie in the 80s, like the bar is already so high,
Yeah.
between the House American Werewolf in London. So, this one does the job, but eh, I don't need to see a werewolf beat someone with a baseball bat. Like that was just kind of silly, but it was fine. I would give it 2.5 stars, I guess.
I mean, Gary Busey is seemingly more sober in his role, um, less now Busey.
Less car accidenty.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice. It's. I don't want to say it's nice to see Gary Busey because I don't think that's really a true statement, but it's more like it's it's nice to see him in a better shape in his career sometimes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, oh, he was an actor at some point who was
who
actually
was in
acting.
movies.
Yeah, and young Corey Haim, which I
Yeah,
totally.
rest in peace.
Yeah, a bunch of people in that movie actually. Um, but yeah, Silver Bullet. I also watched Possession for the first time, and it went
Okay.
mostly over my head. I don't know what I was expecting. I want to like rewatch it to try to get it to sink in a little bit more, but I feel like it's one of those films that's less about plot and character and more about the experience you get from watching it. So I think I
Mhm.
need to go into it with that. It's got Sam Neill, and like Sam Neill's just when Sam Neill's in a horror movie, you pay attention.
Yeah,
But I was
but
paying attention.
this is pre Sam Neill like really establishing himself as like kind of a mini horror maestro in the 90s with In the Mouth of Madness and Event Horizon. And I mean Jurassic Park to some extent has like horror elements to it, but
Yeah,
uh yeah, that's a weird fucking movie.
it is. It's very strange, but even though it didn't entirely, maybe it was also way too overhyped.
Yeah, that's the
Uh,
thing. I think there's no way, based on everyone that has talked about it. I'm a fucking shill, so I bought the Velvety Deluxe Edition, but it's a movie I've only watched like twice, and it's not something I really feel like I need to go back to a lot. Um, but I think it's because it's kind of like um, I think to some extent, even though it's not as transgressive as like Requiem for a Dream, that's a really great movie, like at least in my opinion. But I don't really want to watch it a lot because it makes me
yeah,
uncomfortable.
I forgot that I owned Requiem for a Dream on DVD when I was in college
Oh
because
yeah,
I just had it on DVD, but I didn't watch it for years and years and years. And then I was like, wait, did I sell it? And I realized I still had it. And I eventually sold it, but it was re-released on 4K recently, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, I should pick that. No, I'm never going to watch it. I'm never going to watch that movie again, as
I mean,
great as it is.
I actually did upgrade it to 4K, but that's because again, I'm just an absolute whore for
Yeah,
that. And
I
I
mean,
also had it on DVD, so I'm like, it's time to
yeah,
upgrade. I skipped the Blu-ray, went straight. I don't even know if it was on Blu-ray, so there's that.
yeah.
But
Maybe I'll get it eventually, but
you get it
it's
on
one of those
sale.
like I should own that, but how many times am I really going to sit down and watch it?
As
I don't
someone that
know.
owns a Serbian film, I can't answer that question, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I mean, there was a lot to like in Possession. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it went over my head a little bit.
Its
Uh,
reputation is hard to proceed.
yeah, 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 exactly. But I also watched and enjoyed, and I'm sure you've at least heard of it. Sick from John Hyams,
Yes,
Corey
meaning to watch it.
Williams. You
Meaning
haven't
to
seen
watch
it
it.
yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, it was good. I was pleasantly surprised. But I feel like speaking of reputation, like a lot of people are like, this is amazing. This is one of the best horror films of the year so far. And I'm like, we're just in January. It was really good. It may very well wind up on my top 10 at the end of the year. But for now, I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. And I have to say, at the height of the pandemic, I knew that someone was going to be making a movie about all the chaos and the hellscape going on around us, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Songbird or whatever COVID kind of horror movies are going to come out of this. I lived through it. I don't need to watch it.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy this, and I liked it. So Kevin Williamson sure showed me, who has a co-writing credit on it. He's
Okay.
got an stand with someone. I forgot her name. It's not Julie Plec, but yeah, but he was a writer on it. So, and you can definitely tell, and it's like, oh my God, Kevin Williamson totally came back. Did I say Kevin Smith before? I feel
No,
like I
you did
did.
not. No.
Okay, well, oops. It's like, oh, Kevin Williamson actually came back to slashers and like kind of under the radar way. Like we didn't even realize it. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's been something that a few people have recommended. So I hope I can get around to it. Well,
Yeah.
I will get around to it. I mean, it's fucking on. I think it's on Peacock, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then
So
I'll
what
definitely get
have you
around to
been
it.
watching instead of Sick?
Haven't been watching Sick. In fact, haven't been watching a whole heck of a lot. Um, as I've
Oh yeah,
told
you
you,
moved, didn't you?
yeah, as I told
You moved.
you, had a flood, kind of had to pack everything up. Doesn't look like it because we've moved into the new place and all as well. In the process, didn't get a lot to watch, but I have seen a few things. One of them was The Apology, which was on Shutter.
Oh yeah, yep. I
Um,
saw that last month.
yeah, it was fine. Like it was like kind of a subversive take on the revenge genre, which I thought was really interesting. Um, I also feel like the actor playing, the the same actor who plays Skylar in Breaking Bad. I'm forgetting her name, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just hard not to see her in that role, unfortunately. But I think that's just because she was so much of herself, seemingly, on that. So yeah, I liked it. It's definitely an interesting take. And it's short and sweet. It could be a little shorter, but that's just me. I'm a I'm a what is that? Stickler.
And
That's the one. That's the one. Stickler for the runtime.
I like a short movie. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I just like the efficiency of a good horror movie. But I also was able to check out Kids versus Aliens, which is I think coming out tomorrow. Or this well, we're recording this on the 19th, so tomorrow being the 20th. But yeah, that was pretty fun. It's kind of like, the Monster Squad meets Aliens, and um it definitely doesn't hold back where you think it might. But it also shows a very admirable amount of restraint to not be totally exploitative of like the fact that there are kids in the movie. Like there's a lot of admiration for those characters. So I dug it quite a bit. I had a lot of fun with it. And it's like, I'm pretty sure it's like 82 minutes too. So
Mhm.
if you're unsure if you have 82 minutes in your life, you can always watch the VHS 2 segment, which Jason Eisner did. That's the alien abduction. I think it's like Slumber Party, drawing a blank on it, but something
The
like
last
that.
one of VHS 2, which I can't remember anything else from it at the moment except a dog needlessly dies at the end, and that's the thing that sticks with me. Just one of the worst dog deaths. But by all accounts, the movie's a lot better than that. And also, just hearing you talk about it now just reminded me I rewatched Attack the Block this week. Still
Oh,
great.
so good. So good.
Yeah, still. I remember the year it came out, like when I'm thinking of my favorite films of the year, like obviously there were better films than Attack the Block, but I was like, you know what? I would rather watch Attack the Block right now than any of the other films on the list that I made. It's
Yeah.
just great. Goes down smooth.
Speaking of going down somewhat smooth, I rewatched the legend. I also about speaking of werewolves, the Legend of Wolf Hollow or the Wolf of Snow Hollow, which I think is on Shutter now. And man, that's just I feel like that did not get enough fair shakes as far as like how good it is. It's funny, you know, I'm not going to spoil it, but yeah, you could debate like what genre it falls under, but I think it's pretty squarely horror and it's fucking funny. Jim, what's his name?
Jim Cummings
Yeah, Jim Cummings is just
of
like,
Hills and a
yeah,
ton of
like
other
I mean, he's just
detectives.
totally typecast as that sheriff, but like he really like I think he wrote and directed that movie. So like I just give it a lot of props and I think it's a lot of fun. And again, it's short to this, 90 minutes, something like that. I did check out another there's a lot of Shutter ones as you can tell because that's internet service being the most easy utility to access. Christmas Bloody Christmas, which meh,
Yeah,
meh,
it was
fine.
fine.
Like, like
Yeah,
I do agree with a lot of people that the Santa should have probably looked a bit more like a robot and less like a person, but I definitely get
I
the
mean, he
vibe
was.
he's going for.
Yeah, I feel like Joe Bagos keeps trying to make a movie that I'm gonna just love flat out and like fall over and praise. Like I feel like he's almost there, but like I've just kind of liked everything he's made. But I feel, you know, I don't know
Yeah.
how to explain. It's like
No, it's
I
like
I
he's so
like
good
him.
to being good. They're so close to being good, but there's something that's glaringly off about him. Like in Christmas Bloody Christmas, if you get rid of the absolute like scolding takes that you're just lambasted into for the first 30 minutes and like make them just average characters, the movie becomes maybe a little boring to start, but at least you're not like thinking the whole time, oh my God, I hope all of you die in the biggest fire, like in very brutal ways, because like you're so unlikable and like as a filmmaker, you make the choice that these are the characters we're going to spend our time with, which they have their, arcs and what have you, but the way they start out is like, why do you want me to hate them so much? And it's kind of like in VFW, it's like I really should enjoy this movie a lot more, but there's something about it that just isn't as good as it could be. Like maybe it's just like these old men being a little more racist than need to be, like I get that they're old, but like it's kind of like we don't need I don't need that to be layered on maybe, but I also need to go back and watch it because I only saw it once and I was like, I was pretty lukewarm on it. But Bliss was quite good. Like I only watched it twice, but
Mhm. Yeah, not a bad filmmaker. Doesn't make necessarily all
no.
bad movies, but I feel like based on my taste, he's eventually going to hit a vein for me, and then it'll be like, thank you, Joe Begos. I'm just
It's
waiting for
just
that.
the aorta is just gonna all the Lowell blood at that point.
Yep. Oh, he did it. He did it,
Yeah.
guys. We're okay. Yeah.
Just the opium den of Joe Begos films from that point on. Well, and then the only thing I tried to
No.
watch
Yeah.
was The Pale Blue Eye. And I say
Oh,
tried,
I did that too. Oh, you couldn't get through it.
no. And I was kind of tired, but it's not a movie to watch when you're kind of tired because it
No,
takes
it's
a
not.
very, very long time to arrive. And I woke up like right as the thing was ending, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. Um, but it was well acted, you know, that had that going for it. But I do kind of wonder, like, what is this? Like, this is just a Christian Bale period piece mystery.
Watch it again when you're not falling asleep because it was pretty good. And
Okay.
yeah, it's one of the things where for a while you're wondering what's Christian Bale doing in this movie, but then you realize it, and it's one of those, without giving anything away, it's kind of better on a rewatch because you can kind of, knowing what you know the first time kind of enriches it a little bit. So,
Okay.
I think, but not bad.
I'll get around to it again, I'm sure. I think it's
Yeah.
just need some power to go out or something, so I'll be forced to watch it on my phone or tethered to some mobile internet. But um anyways, that's about it for me. So to that
Cool.
end, um as we always do at this point, or we have to plug that we actually do, in fact, write for a website. So
That
you You can check it out, macabredaily.com. Um, I've picked a handful of articles from the past month just for us to talk about briefly to see what the hell's been going on. And I'm almost afraid to click the first one, but I figure we just got to get it out of the way. Sex Cream is coming out.
No, no, no. Excuse me. They're using Roman numerals.
They're
It is
back to the
screen.
numeral. They're
We are,
Roman numeraling it.
we are
Numerally.
we are giving for a horror franchise, a long-running horror franchise, to bring back Roman numerals. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Wow.
Ghostface lives.
I didn't. I don't
Ghostface
know
did.
if you're being facetious as far as how much this Roman numerally matters, but have you watched the trailer? Is it good?
Yeah. You haven't seen the trailer?
No.
Yeah, you haven't seen the teaser or the trailer that came out today on
Uh,
purpose.
only thing I saw on Instagram was like a 2 second clip of like a subway thing, like in just a mask, and that was it. Like I think it was like the teaser for the teaser. So I have intentionally not watched it though.
Okay. Okay.
Not because I'm like some purist. It just I am not super interested where it's going. Like I'll see it because I support the creation of more horror movies, but I'm not like enthused, you know?
I'm actually, I mean, I'm very curious about this. It looks good. I mean, of course, it's shot in Montreal and not New York, but like, if that's like the original Ghostface mask or like one of the originals from the first movie, my eyes are going to roll in the back of my head, which it very well could be. I
Oh,
had
see
said
what
about,
they did there with the M? That's
yeah,
marketing.
they could have done that with
Yeah, they
Scream.
could have. Makes you wonder.
Yeah, but maybe for future box
There
set
is no
release.
plan. These movies have no plan. Just make it up as they go.
Yeah, which I honestly I kind of like.
Yeah.
It's because
You don't need to
sometimes
George
you'll
Lucas it, you know?
or David Gordon Green it, as
Yeah.
much as I like Halloween Ends, but yeah, but one of my picadillos about the Scream series that I mentioned previously is that it seems like when it comes to the motivation of the killers, it's less about something personal and more about like fandom and like the way the damn kids are today. And it looks like it's going to be more of that in the new one. And I'd like it to go back to something a little bit personal. But yeah, Ghostface in Manhattan.
Yeah.
They're promising a whole new kind of Ghostface. I've heard that before, but look, Radio Silence have proven they know how to make a Scream movie. So yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. No,
So
like I said, I'll see it. Just I'm sure it'll be a Scream movie, which is important. There will be
yeah.
many Ghostface masks, I'm sure.
And the
Um,
Jen Vega TikTok dance somehow, maybe in
um,
the end, they'll figure it out.
yep. If it doesn't go viral, it didn't matter at all. But what did go viral in people's hearts and minds was The Last of Us. Did you watch The Last of Us premiere?
I did, and so far so good.
I watched it
Um,
twice, not on purpose. I wanted to watch it with my wife, who's never played the games, so I wanted to see like,
yeah,
does this
mine
make
too.
sense? Like, what's your take on this? She's like, yeah, it looks good. I'm like, all right, the general public's
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, it's so far so good. I didn't think of The Walking Dead once while watching it.
No,
Um, yeah,
that was
I'm
never a
surprised.
fair comparison, though. To be honest, like, I think, but maybe it's
Yeah,
because I have a bias because I know the video game and I know The Walking Dead, so I know the difference. But um, yeah, that was
well,
I'm glad
I bring
that
it
I'm
up.
glad that that didn't confirm anything, any people's any shitty opinions out there.
Yeah, I bring it up because I'm currently watching the last season of The Walking Dead on Netflix, just because I I
Is
need
it
it.
there?
It's the last season, and I need it to end. And yeah, it's time for that show to go. But yeah, that's why it's on my mind. But yeah, Last of Us, the characters are the characters. It's well cast. I like how it looks. Barely any creature action, which is totally fine by me. And I'm just holding my breath for a good adaptation.
Yeah, I actually liked it quite a bit, but not willing to say how good or not good it is yet, only because
Oh
the
yeah, it's
first
just one.
episode is such table stakes. And like there were some very effective table stakes. So I think they did a very good job laying a great foundation. But I think what really will be telling is actually can they balance the horror elements with the people elements like the game does? Because that's really and also make that leap to the medium, which much of the story in Last of Us is told through playing the game. So how they kind of did that, with the town scene when he's driving, like that was super
Yeah,
intense.
that
So
was right out of the games, but you wouldn't know unless you played it.
yeah, but there is like I think they've done a good job with that, and I would never had any doubts when you have like the people that did Chernobyl and the great material to work with. It's like, come on, it's only theirs to fuck up. So I'm rooting for this, and I'm gonna keep watching it for sure.
Mhm.
Speaking of people, I have no good segue from that to be honest. I thought I had something, but it's gone.
We're professionals.
Um, Yeah, exactly. We are amateur professionals. So I didn't even know that this was a thing, but apparently Carpenter was asked about doing a Dead Space movie.
I'm sure they've
Um
asked about doing all kinds of movies. I'm sure they've asked him about doing a Last of Us movie, but the
yeah,
man just to sit at home and play his games and smoke his cigars, and that's fine. I
yep.
know they say he's interested in directing again, maybe, but like if I'm
Carpenter has to
done.
do his own things. Like the
Yeah,
only way I would really want him to return is if he comes under the terms in which he wants to do. Like if that's because he has to make a buck, hey, that's cool. But I really hope it's more under the kind of context of I have the opportunity to kind of the shackles are off. I can do what I want. And because Carpenter's always best when he's doing something that's very, very much his own. And when he starts to do other people's stuff, much like some of the best horror auteurs, when they adapt other people's material or they try and do other things that doesn't end up landing as well as their own. So I'm glad. And also, I just don't think Dead Space is like John Carpenter material. Like, I don't see that being the aesthetic he's going for. He kind of tried something like that with Ghost of Mars, and
and the
um,
thing. I mean,
yeah, and the
it's
thing.
already a game that was inspired heavily by John Carpenter, so I'd rather read interviews that John Carpenter gives at this point than watch him make a movie that he's not really interested in making. Like and I don't even need him to be like 70s, 80s John Carpenter anymore. If he's
No,
like, I'll
he's
watch
Sage
another
John
film from,
Carpenter.
yeah, I'll watch another film from the guy who made Escape from LA or Vampires. Fuck it. But he doesn't seem to be interested in that, and I'm not one for making him come out of hiding. He gave us Halloween, The Thing, and a million other wonderful things, and changed the face of horror. Let him rest.
Yeah.
Let him just enjoy his basketball games. That's where I am.
No, I'm with you 100%. And I do hope that they do make. I mean, they're going to make a Dead Space movie, so hey, like that's going to happen. I actually do think that this material does lend itself better to a television format. So I kind of hope that an HBO, not Netflix, because Netflix scares the shit out of me when they try to adapt video games, except for Castlevania, which is hands down the
Yeah.
best Castlevania adaptation that we could have ever possibly gotten. That wasn't, and it had to be animated. But you know what? I don't watch a lot of animation, but that is 3 great seasons of ultra violent and a hell of a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fun. Anyway, I'm digressing, but yeah, Carpenter, play your video games, watch your basketball. We appreciate all you've done. Universal Studios is bringing a year-round horror experience to Las Vegas, which is giving us just more and more reasons to throw up and spend money there. Um, so we don't. I mean, yeah, this is a little bit of details here.
I've never
Considering
been
the
to.
water crisis, I'm worried about Las Vegas's plans to bring more people there, but that's a different topic. What were you saying?
I've never been to Vegas, but good for them. Hope it makes a ton of money, and yeah, it's good
I'm
for
sure it
horror.
will.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll make money, and I'm sure I'll go to see it. But I am I and actually I feel like I'm, like you always feel like sometimes you set an idea and then it happens, and you're like, oh, I totally thought of that, but clearly there's no possible fucking way that that could have happened.
Hmm.
And no one should be so dense to believe that their singular idea has never been thought before. But
Yeah,
um,
I know
I,
I'm that smart.
yeah, like, oh, I totally thought there should be a Mortal Kombat too. Like when I was like 7, I'm like, oh yeah, there's gonna be. I should make a second one. It's like then there's like a second one. It's like not understanding the total kind of under capitalism and how it all works. But um, yeah, I do like this idea that they're dedicating an entire theme park to horror, because I think if it does well, then we will also get an abundance of kind of other forms of entertainment. And that also means that we might get like grindhouse focus experiences. Like think about, because I'm just thinking about these like the ones that can't afford to actually give us Universal Studios quality. So they end up by de facto becoming like the things you go to like carnivals at, basically. But you're
An
right.
actual grindhouse haunted house, where as you're walking through, the floor is always sticky. It
Yes.
smells of urine throughout the entire way.
There's just this
Strobe
constant
light.
like noise just playing around, but like also with the soundtrack of the movie, you're like, what's happening here? And why are people eating popcorn?
Yeah, I
But
like it.
yeah,
Fun version of Rob Zombie's 31.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, listen, hey, maybe they should give Rob Zombie a theme park, and I guarantee you that'd be a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there in the universe. Rounding us off with Nicolas Cage in the Renfield trailer. I did watch this trailer. What are your thoughts?
Cool.
Yeah,
Um, I mean,
I
I,
actually was
I,
far more entertained than I thought I was going to be.
yeah, I mean, Nicolas Cage as Dracula kind of seems like it's going to be a slam dunk. Uh, yeah, I'm just I have no doubts. Sign me up. I am happy with whatever Nicolas Cage wants to do. He's, we had the reconnaissance. Now I think we're in the Cageaissance. And yeah, keep it coming, dude.
Yeah, I had a couple chuckles watching the trailer. So either it's a really well cut trailer, which is totally possible, or we have a kind of fun little horror comedy on our hands, which I think is equally as possible. So
Yeah.
with that,
Oh, and just
yes,
the Fred Paige Troxel and Kim Gunzinger's film Fredheads is the #1 documentary on Amazon. You can order it now. I believe it is a DVD, and I'm sure it's going to come to streaming later on. But yeah, it's there, ladies and gentlemen.
number
Um,
one
Available for
champions.
pre-order. But yeah, it's happening. My copy should be coming any day now, and good for them. Hell
Yeah, this
yeah.
is the beginning of, I'm sure, many more great things for them. Um, and we'll certainly show our support. Post links to pre-order that um, when we post this episode. So with that, we will get to our topic for today, the 5 horror pivots. So now, Lowell, you gave us the setup.
So I'll kick it
Um,
off.
Yeah, you kick it off with yours, and I had a lot of fun doing this, by the way, because it required a lot of research, like into like why
Yeah.
they did this and what was happening, like the historical context. So you totally tweaked my film nipples on this one.
Well, I'm always happy to tweak
Could cut
your.
some glass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome. My #5 is one of the movies I thought of when it came to doing this list, which I think is a pretty good example of what I was going for. Kevin Smith's Red State, a horror film by a guy who, up to that point, and I mean, kind of since, isn't really known for horror films. And we've talked about Kevin Smith before. He was one of my, building blocks for getting a film education because I just loved his earlier films. And,
Yeah.
he's a director. I'll watch any of his films, even though I've kind of lessened my, expectations, lowered my expectations a little bit as the years have gone on. But he seems like a great guy, and he's having fun, and he's making the movies he wants to make, and I don't begrudge him. That said, this is kind of the last film he came out that I was actually excited to see. I wouldn't say his last good film, but
No.
definitely his best directed film. He always said that he was never really a director. He just wanted to have the reins on the scripts that he wrote, so someone wouldn't come in and mess him up. But it really seemed like he went to film school here. It's not bad. It's well made. Um, it it's a little bit long in some parts. He's got a Michael Parks fetish. I mean, I love Michael Parks too, and he is one of the highlights of the film. But it's that the his big scene could have been trimmed a little bit, but yeah, it's Kevin Smith's take on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, and you'd think after Dogma he'd be done talking about religion, but
Oh no.
it's actually kind of nice to hear him still talk about it a little bit. And people haven't talked about it. I haven't heard anyone really focus on the ending of this movie, but I love the ending because if you think about it, it's kind of like a flip on the Deus Ex Machina, and like the very last shot is just like hilarious.
Yeah.
Even after such like a serious movie, and he's just got a great cast and not a perfect film by any means, but I remember watching it and going, "Holy shit, he did it!" And I'm gonna get the. I think there's a 4K coming out from Lionsgate, so
Yeah. Just announced recently, I think.
yeah.
It's funny that you put Red State on your list because I put Tusk on my list. And
So,
even though Red State came first, I have a pretty good justification for including Tusk on here. Um,
okay,
and in that Red State did not do very well. And
that's not a justification.
no,
I
no,
mean,
but this is the leading to there's a narrative here, which is Red State didn't perform very well, even though it probably deserved better, more praise than it got. I think a lot of it is just it released at a time when it didn't. I mean, it wasn't really marketed to much, if I remember correctly. It kind of came and went in a lot of ways, but the fact that he would come back to horror just two films later and do so then arguably a better horror movie than Red State, because Red State is doesn't necessarily go it's hillbilly horror but it's still never is it's not like Texas Chainsaw Massacre of a Leatherface. You've got like redneck zealots, and
yeah,
so
it could be
it's
like
more the
his second.
sacrament, less less the Sawyer family. But Tusk is a full-on fucking horror movie. And even though it's not perfect, like so many of his movies are not, but even still, it's done really well. And no one can deny how gross the fucking Justin Long walrus makeup fucking looks and how sad it is. Like it's a
Oh,
genuinely sad movie, kind of like May. Like there's a melancholy sadness to like how these things turn out because if I remember correctly, Justin Long's character didn't really do anything wrong. Wasn't like he was barbarian and kind of a likable dickhead, But yeah, what else did I write about this? Huge bomb, by the way. It made
found its
1 point, huh?
it found its fans.
No,
Let's
but
be
like
real. Yoga hosers. He found the fan base.
sure. And I would say that between Red State and Yoga Hosers, that's what you get is Tusk, is like this like off the wall kind of goofy sensibility, but also super well done, gross out horror movie that has the heart of the characters that you would see in a Kevin Smith movie. Like you kind of care about Justin Long a bit more than you would a normal horror character, but that's what makes that kind of story work. But it only made a $1.8 million internationally, which is pretty fucking bad. And I think he did Yoga Hosers after this, but like Yoga Hosers felt like I don't think it was Kickstarter, but it felt like a Kickstarter movie, like something just was funded on the fly, not um
Yeah, like he's making a home movie,
yeah.
and good for him and his posterity. I I don't need to revisit that one.
But I love that he loves to try horror, like I think that that's kind of
And he
admirable.
loves to try in general. Like even
Yeah,
if it doesn't land, he's like, I want to make this movie, and he goes and he makes it, and
yeah,
it's and like I mean, honestly, we could be trashing the shit out of him right now in what we're saying, but he wouldn't care because he's Kevin Smith and he's living his best life. and it comes
But the
through in
thing
everything
is,
he does.
these movies, these two movies, Red State and Tusk, are far better than most of the horror movies that we watch. Like I would put them above, and I'm talking about newer movies, not just like things you revisit that you love, right? Because and while there is a pretty good resurgence of some really quality horror right now, I also think that there's also going to come this wave of shit that's going to kind of pile on afterwards. It's going to try and imitate rapidly fleeting trends. And Kevin Smith dabbling in this when he wants to is not only admirable, but the output is actually pretty good. Like Tusk did find its audience, you know, and Red State is probably going to find its audience now that it's getting a 4K release. Um, so I think his movies, much like him, he's going to be one of those filmmakers that people are going to look at differently over time. And I think the faults are going to wear off largely in favor of what he does so well. And he'll get a lot of passes for things like Tusk and Red State and fucking Geely as well, you know, like or
You know
was
that
he?
wasn't
No, that was Jersey Girl. That was the one.
fair. Yeah.
Geely was the other debacle involving Ben Affleck. But anyway, yeah, it was my number five was Tusk. So what's your number four?
Okay. My number four is the remake of Suspiria from Luca Guadagnino, who was hot as hell off of Call Me by Your Name, and immediately turns around and is like, "Yeah, I want to remake this Italian horror movie from the '70s, but I want it to be completely different." Whereas that one is incredibly colorful and spooky. Mine is gray and eerie, and we're gonna have Tilda Swinton all over the place, and we're gonna have some weird stuff about the war and Bader Meinhof that doesn't quite land, but it was really good. The score by Tom York is incredible.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still not entirely sure I grabbed everything from it that I could. I don't know if it's just because it's really deep or just a lot of it kind of flew over my head. But I did really like it, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, he's a good filmmaker, so I knew he would at least do something interesting with it. But this was more than, yeah, I really liked that movie when it came out. I want to make it again today. So
Yeah,
yeah,
this is on my list as well, and for very similar reasons. Large, but there's just nothing in his background that would suggest that this is what he wants to do, you know?
yeah,
And so I think that this is one of the main examples of this theme is he's this Academy Award winning director who are nominated. Did he win? Oscar nominated.
he was
But he
but yeah,
didn't
overcharged. Yeah,
um and uh he's known for like these art house shorts and docs and things, and he does. And then I remember distinctly hearing the news of this remake and be like, oh fuck, like there's nothing good will come of this. And I I'm happy to eat those words because I think what came out was far better than anyone could have expected. But I do agree, but I also think that what you said, there's something to what you said about I don't think I got everything from it. And it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people got a lot from it, and particularly the parts that are not focused on the horror, more focused on the world surrounding the school. Um, and everyone always says the same thing. I want to go back and rewatch it, but then there's that kind of like hesitation because it's like a 2.5 hour exercise, you know, kind of like Midsummer. Like it's not something that
a
you can
lot.
really, yeah, it's a lot, you know, it's a time investment. So I wonder if the density of it all gets in the way of it being as I know it gets in the way of it being great as it could, because if you take out that historical context stuff, there's a really solid little like witch horror movie that still is different enough from Suspiria to be related to it, but a totally new imagining in the best possible way. So
Yeah,
yeah, big fan of
yeah.
that one. All right, so then what's your number three?
Was that your number four too?
I mean, I don't really put them in order. It just happens to be on my list, so it's easier to talk
Oh,
about at
okay,
the same time.
okay. Oh, well then, yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, some of these are better than others, but I didn't really need to put them in the
Yeah.
list either. For shits and gigs, my number three is Jennifer's Body.
Ah,
Uh,
nice.
Karan Kusama and Diablo Cody, who wins an Oscar and is just immediately like, "Yep, gotta." got a demon Heathers for you right here. It's not exactly like that, but I'm sure that was part of the elevator pitch.
No, it's kind of like it's basically the closest thing to My Best Friend's Exorcism. Uh, that's not that actual movie adaptation.
Yeah, it's the best film Megan Fox has made, and the best she's
Truth.
been, and she knows it. Um, and yeah, it didn't do great when it came out, but of course we're all talking about it 10 years later. Um, she's great. Script is great. Even for a movie with man-eating demon, it's still somehow a little more grounded than Juno, which is nice. Maybe when I saw Juno, I was thinking, or after seeing Juno, realizing that the screenwriter was going to make a horror movie, I'm like, is it going to be like, twee and cute, and then there's some blood? But no, it's Diablo Cody knew exactly what she was doing, and yeah, it's a cheeky good time.
It is. Yeah, it's not did not make my list, but certainly one of the bigger examples of this. And still a great movie. Like I'll be the first to admit I did not see it at all when it first came out. And I think I saw it like maybe after it hit video. And then like, oh, this is good, but I forgot about it. That would be it definitely deserves a nice special edition if it doesn't have one.
Yeah, I know I have the blue somewhere. Yeah, there it is. There's like an unrated cut with, commentary and stuff, but Scream Factory can still do something with it.
Wink,
Scream
wink,
Factory
nudge,
do
nudge.
with everything. If only they'd give us that Nightmare on Elm Street 4K edition
Yeah.
that I will mortgage my apartment for.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my
Jennifer's
number 3.
body. So my number three is way out of left field, but I actually have a poster of it on my walls, which is Night of the Hunter from 1955. And this is one of the biggest swings because Charles Lawton was an actor, classically
Is it
trained.
his only movie that he directed?
Yeah, the only movie he directed, and it did so badly that he never directed another movie. He went to do stage directing until he died, like
Oh,
11 years later. Um, and it's wild because he did direct another movie before this, but he's kind of uncredited. So this is his first official credit as director. And it did absolutely terrible financially, and in the box office and in critics. But it's now, I was shown it in college for my film classes as an example of a great horror movie. And to this day, still think it's one of the most like it's so good. Like I don't understand.
it's really good.
Like it's just
Robert,
so watchable.
yeah,
Huh?
Robert Mitchum is awesome as the
Yes.
preacher.
Like
Yeah,
he's so just charismatic but terrifying. And there's genuine like this is I think it's a pre-code film as well. So like we have like children in terror, like who are being I don't know like absolutely just tormented. So yeah, I fucking love it. And it's kind of strange that it didn't get the love. But a lot of these movies, I feel like that's the case, which is they don't necessarily they fall into two categories. Either they get absolutely knocked out of the ballpark, which are my other two. And then there's some that just like don't get any attention at all. And that's, unfortunately, it must suck to have your film get great when you're not around to see it get that reaction. But
or like the poster behind you with John Carpenter's The Thing, where it does eventually get there, but at that point you just don't care anymore.
yeah,
But you, in your heart, you made a great film.
yeah. And, and I'm sure Carpenter has some nice royalty deals associated with the thing. So I'm sure he's not upset that it's getting a resurgence, but I wouldn't either. Make your money, man. Get your money, king.
Yeah. There was that Guillermo del Toro Twitter thread about The Thing. Do you remember that from a few years ago? My wife's not on Twitter and she still quotes it because it's just funny. It's just
No.
Guillermo del Toro going off about how much he loves John Carpenter, with like movie by movie. And it ends with him going, "Now go to the video store and repent." But at one point he tells a story of like someone tells John Carpenter that The Thing is their favorite movie and inspired him. And he's like, and John Carpenter is just like, yeah, and what does that get me? And I'm just like, he's just the saltiest bitch, and I love him.
Amen.
Uh,
You just had a birthday recently as well.
yeah, 75
Watched
years
Escape
ago.
from New York on 4K, which wow.
Nice. I was wondering, I have the Blu-ray from Screen Factory, but I don't know if I was going to upgrade to the 4K.
I
Maybe I should.
love that movie so much. Like that and Big Trouble in Little China. Just as soon as there's a Big Trouble in Little China 4K, I'll buy that movie for the umpteenth millionth time as well.
And there will be,
Yes, oh, for sure.
Screen Factory knows where they have our money.
Yeah, they've got me really by the dick and balls on that one. But
yeah. And speaking of which, there's a 4K double feature of the first two Slumber Party Massacre movies coming out from Screen Factory, which is great because the DVD and Blu-ray went out of print. So I snagged that right up because I need two on my shelf.
yeah,
I mean, one's great. I need to own two. Yeah,
I've got the double feature of 2 and 3, and I do want the first one in 4K. But I also would, I'll see. I'm sure they'll go on sale, and I'm weak, so it's just a matter. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's just funny because I feel like Slumber Party Massacre 2 got a cult resurgence just as the DVD went out of print. Like I saw it and I was like, oh my God, I need to own this. And it was available to buy for years, and then it was gone. And now it's back.
So many of those movies, like Sword and the Sorcerer was that way. Or no, it's the Beast, the Deathstalker movies, which Deathstalker 2 is the only one you need to see, but very hard to find movies these days.
Okay. My next one is A Quiet Place.
Yes.
John Krasinski. Even though I think I prefer the second one to the first. I'm not sure. I feel like I need to rewatch it again, but I remember feeling that at the time I watched it. But yeah, John Krasinski. He had directed 2 dramas before this, but his first horror movie, and he did it really well. So good job, Jimothy. Also rewatching this with my wife right now for the umpteenth time. Still rocks.
Yeah. I definitely would have made the list, but I didn't love A Quiet Place. I like the second one, I think, of quite a bit more, but definitely the big horror pivot from good old Jim.
Yep.
But my number 2 is going to be The Exorcist. William Friedkin did The French Connection right before this. Didn't really do too much before that. And he did come back to horror later on with The Guardian and then Bug. And The Guardian is a fucking wild movie.
Isn't it about a magic tree and
yes.
druid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Wild movie. I went to a 16 millimeter 90s movie screening they were doing in LA once, and they showed that, and I was like, this movie is off the fucking chain. But to that end, The Exorcist, obviously one of the most influential horror movies of all time. William Friedkin, not someone who's necessarily known for his horror pedigree by any regard, and it won 2 Oscars and was nominated for 10. That's pretty wild.
Exorcist.
Yeah, it's The Exorcist. So, but it's also a massive horror pivot, and it caused a massive controversy in society because they just weren't ready for that. He could have ruined his entire career in that movie, but as we all know, he went on to make some pretty outstanding movies. And this is a great chance to plug Sorcerer as one of the most intense movies of all time. But yes, Friedkin and The Exorcist is a massive horror U-turn.
And I kind of think I know what your number 1 would be, but makes me think I should have rethought my list a little bit because Friedkin is known primarily for The Exorcist, but he was already an established director who made a ton of other movies out of the genre before that. So yeah, some other people that I kind of thought about but decided not to put it on here.
I played a little loose with the rules because
I did too.
because I think I think that there is when I was thinking about the exercise, it was important to me to note that like the Tusk one example, like even though Kevin Smith did Red State before it, it's still a pretty bold move to be like, I'm gonna do it again. Like I didn't do it right the first time, and they're gonna give me some money, I'm gonna do it again. So
Yeah.
like that's admirable,
Mm.
and not expected. But
Yeah.
anyway,
So with that, I didn't put Jordan Peele on my list, but I can't tell you why because I mean I guess it was his first film that he directed was Get Out, so maybe you could say he was establishing himself as a horror
yeah, like
director.
if he would have done like some period dramas maybe after Get Out, it might have been easier to justify. But I didn't put Jordan Peele on either.
Yeah. But so okay, so this one I almost put Last Night in Soho on here, not as my number one, but on the list in general. And I thought about it because obviously Edgar Wright did Shaun of the Dead, which is a horror comedy, but Last Night in Soho is such a different film than any of the other films he's done. You can still feel his fingerprints all over it, but it's not like he's almost like a genre unto himself, kind of like Tim Burton or Wes Anderson is. You know what I mean? Um, so what was I saying? So I did not put that on here. Um, even though you could say that he already made a horror movie. But my number one is kind of half of a horror movie, and maybe it's not even the best one on this list. But I loved it to death, and the director was kind of barely established until he did this, and he hasn't really made a horror movie again after this. I mean, maybe once or twice. Anyway, From Dusk Till Dawn, Robert Rodriguez, who came up with Tarantino with El Mariachi and Desperado, and he's firmly known as an action filmmaker at this point, and he pivots right into a vampire siege movie. That's also a crime thriller that fits his milieu, but we're playing loose with the rules. But I just fucking love this movie. I rewatched it
Yeah,
again a few years ago. It's still great. No one talks about George Clooney's performance, but I
it's
think it's
fucking
one of those.
legendary.
Yeah, it's like he's coming off of ER. He's playing it with vigor, like he's got something to prove, and he's just this guy who, if it was written by someone other than Tarantino and played by someone other than George Clooney, it can go off the rails so hard. But like they know, here's this guy who's like he's a pragmatist. He is not a rapist. He is not a killer unless he has to. He has a code and he has rules and he lives in the world, and suddenly there are vampires, and now there are vampires in the world that he has to deal with because he witnessed it with his own two eyes. And he balances the comedy and the straight man, the comedy and the pragmatism of that, even though he's gone on to do bigger and better things. I mean, still, it's just fantastic.
Those
And
early
the
Clooney
heart,
films, like this and Out of Sight, just deliver.
yeah, oh,
And
just
I actually would
over,
call this a horror movie, full on horror movie, even though it does the whole Full Metal Jacket like dose like 180 midpoint. Like it still is very firmly planted in the genre because
yeah,
it ends on the genre. It would be different if it becomes like a vampire bar that turns into a heartwarming story about a family trying to make it across back to the U.S. It's a different
yeah.
movie.
Did you
Um,
ever show actually the
no, but I think I have like a set, like a From Dusk Till Dawn collection of some sort that has the show in it. I never watched
it,
it though.
I think it's on Netflix now. It's 3 seasons. It's not bad.
Hmm.
Like I was surprised, and Rodriguez was heavily involved. But it's funny because you're watching it and they kind of readapt the first movie and go from there. But the movie goes from crime movie to horror movie, and then it ends. The show goes from like crime movie to horror movie, still somehow back to crime movie, and then it becomes a hybrid of crime and horror for the rest of the series, and it's just interesting. It's inspired. if nothing else. But the movie's still great.
Well, there was like a what was it? The Night Forever Night or something like that, which was like a show about like vampire
Uh,
cops. Um, there was a whole genre in the '90s of just like supernatural police officers. That
it's not like the show isn't like that. The show is
Okay.
still very from dusk till dawn, and it's like wow, they got a surprising amount of mileage out
Hmm.
of this. So yeah,
Oh, the
it's
titty
worth
twister
visiting.
makes its return.
Yeah. Oh
Well,
yeah.
what did you think my number one's gonna be?
Uh, I'm gonna say Rosemary's Baby.
Ah, good call, but
No,
not.
he made Repulsion.
He
Nope,
did
never
make
mind.
Repulsion. It's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, one could make the argument that Francis Ford
Me,
Coppola had Dementia 13, but I make the case that he barely acknowledges that, and his entire filmography. The only people that know about Dementia 13 are people that collect Vestron Blu-rays and the people that went to film school studying Coppola. But he is known for The Godfather. He's coming fresh off of the most divisive mafia movie of all time, Godfather 3. And they give him all this fucking money to make Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is, for all
and
intents
it's
and
all on the
purposes,
screen. Yeah,
yeah, like it's the best possible version of that movie or that. I'm not going to say the material because I don't know the book well enough to be a critic, but I have yet to find as an entertaining version of the Dracula story as he did. And a lot of that is because you have absolute.
Dracula 2000, sir,
I mean, listen, I'm
sir.
not going to hate on Dracula 2000, but it's not this. We all know that. You know it. I know it.
It's got vitamin C. It's got what plants crave.
Oh, purple stuff. Sunny D. All right. But like he makes this, and like then you have Gary Oldman and fucking Anthony Hopkins, who are just absolutely devouring scenery around them, especially Hopkins, who's just eating it up as fucking Van Helsing. And it's gory, it's gross. It wins a lot of awards for the makeup effects because the like definitely the strangest version of a bat I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, but it works, and it's a 2.5 hour movie that flies by. There's a combination of filmmaking techniques, like the beginning is those background scenes with the eyes, like it's just genuine movie magic shit. And if you watch it in the 4K with the Atmos sound, it just becomes an absolute, just it's a great experience. So he totally knocked it out of the park and got recognized for it. But then he goes on, that's not what he's known for. This is The Outsiders. This is Godfather trilogy. This is shit. I'm blanking on a real big one.
Jack with
Yeah.
Robin Williams.
Oh, that's a
That,
sad movie.
yeah. But yeah, it's almost like Baz Luhrmann's Dracula, but without the
Yeah.
crazy, but like that much energy and that much like we're gonna try this, we're gonna do that, like so much rotoscoping.
And the score, like the soundtrack, like it is kind of like a Baz Luhrmann, but like without the musical stuff. But the score is still like one of the best. I forget the guy's name. It's like Vortex something.
Yeah, it's my wife and I went back to screens for the 30th anniversary.
You
So we
know,
saw it in theaters a few months ago, and it was like, yeah,
it's a fucking
stuff.
movie.
Yeah, and Tom Waits is Renfield. Holy shit, I totally forgot that.
Yeah,
Just
like
hitting it up, eating bugs, just yeah.
all the cast hits on all, and like while there are criticisms of Keanu Reeves, like his role is so insignificant in my mind that like first of all, Gary Oldman is the goddamn star of that movie.
Yeah.
He owns every scene he's in, and he just, I mean, he I don't know. When Gary Oldman dies, that's going to be one of the saddest days for acting because he's done just so much and he's got a range like nobody's business. But uh, it's the best Dracula movie of all time. I won't hear anything else. And yeah, that's our top 5 horror pivots. There's
Yeah.
quite a few of these that weren't included, but it still is a pretty short list. I'm trying to think what else I had on here. I mean, The Shining was one that I was like thinking, Kubrick
Yeah,
didn't really do a
I
horror
thought about
movie.
it, but I mean, I feel like you could watch his earlier films and still feel his intensity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
and
definitely. Did he do a Clockwork? He did a Clockwork Orange before that. So
yeah,
I mean, that's a pretty.
Mhm.
exploitative movie. And then there was Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow.
Was that her first movie though?
Might have been her first directed movie, but she never did another horror movie after that.
Yeah, that's true. But that by the rules,
By the rules. I was
she
gonna
hasn't.
throw in the Quick and the Dead as like a reversal of like horror director pivoting to like non-horror, even though the Quick and the Dead is kind of like a spaghetti western. Like it's as close to a horror western you're gonna get without any horror elements
Yeah,
because
I
it's
saw that
cartoonish.
first time a few years ago, and I was like, "Hey, how come I haven't seen Sam Raimi's Western?" And I watched it, and it is Sam Raimi's Western. Oh my god! And
Yeah,
like everyone in that, Gene Hackman, Russell Crowe, and Leonardo DiCaprio, a young
Sharon
Leonardo,
Stone,
yeah, as the star. Like that's a good ass movie.
and
I'd
then
buy it for.
oh yeah, oh I would absolutely, and then I almost put on Nicholas Winding Refn's the Neon Demon, but some might not consider that a horror movie. I do, I
No,
fucking love it.
it's yeah. I mean, I guess you can. That could be a pivot too, but I don't know, man. I love Drive. He hasn't really done anything else for me. Um, I actually think the best Nicholas Winding Refn movie since Drive was Lost River, which is the film that Ryan Gosling directed. The
I haven't seen
one
that one.
he directed. Oh, you should.
Oh, it was good.
It's yeah. He made it after Drive, but you can tell he gleamed a lot from his experience working with Nicholas Winding Refn. But yeah, it's more like a fever dream than anything else. But it's like you watch it and you're like, why hasn't Ryan Gosling directed anything else? This fucking rules.
I'm sure
So
he will. Once he gets done, once he gets his Barbie money, he'll be able to do the fuck you movies. And like, hey, I hope he does because I genuinely think he's a talent. But this was fun. I'm not sure what we're gonna do for our next one. But we will definitely
I have an idea,
we
but
have some ideas. But until
mm,
then, stay safe, be good, be healthy, and watch a lot of horror movies.
what he said
Adios.
later.